wait.
Oh, we're recording.
There
How
we
scary.
go.
Chris, what am I waiting for?
Nothing. Good.
I don't trust you. Oh no, they're not going to do construction right now. Okay, I might have to yell at my roommates. We'll figure it out then.
Yeah, fight.
All right, once again, you guys can still see my mouse indicator, even though that's good?
Yeah.
Okay. So I am going to be talking about the impact of Yellowstone's gray wolves on the Yellowstone's ecosystem. My name is Abby. I have also gone by Luna online, so both work. Gio was wanting to ask about somebody to take notes and possibly do a Spanish version of this presentation because I am not able to currently do that, and I don't have time to put into this presentation just
Maybe
yet.
for the future. So the idea is that Luna has the chance to have this exchange. I mean, she's going to teach us something, and somehow we are going to help her to learn the right words in Spanish for her to do this very same presentation in Spanish, probably in the future. So, okay, that's the idea. Guys, take notes. Take notes. The idea is that we're going to try to, well, enjoy the presentation, but also try to take this seriously because Luna also took this seriously, and the idea is that we try to show her what we learn at the end, going through all the slides that she's gonna present. So yeah, please take notes and yeah, also enjoy the presentation. Okay, so we're going to try to find maybe a person who could help us, or maybe we could do it all. We could help each other to reconstruct this presentation in Spanish. Okay.
And my roommate said that they are done with their current construction project, so hopefully no more drilling. We'll see what happens. All right, so first I'd like to go over a little bit of an overview of what I plan to cover. We'll first talk about Yellowstone, what it is, where it is, kind of the significance of it. I'll then give a brief history of the wolves in Yellowstone, what happened to them, as well as wolves themselves. We'll talk a little bit about definitions and explanations on more of the scientific terms, since that's what my background is in. And then we'll talk about what the main part of this presentation will be, which are the negative impacts of the loss of the wolves, and then the new changes seen as their introduction and that cascade effect through the ecosystem. There will be a chance for questions at the end if we want to have anything going over in this, or if you want to talk about my background, that's also an option. So Yellowstone is a national park. It was actually one of the world's first national parks, established March 1st, 1872. Right here, this is Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana, or right here. So I live really close here on the Wyoming side. It is quite the large national park. It is not the largest. So it is sitting on top of an active volcano. It is sometimes referred to as a supervolcano since it's very large. And if something were to happen, a lot of people would no longer exist. So if it happened, I wouldn't know. There are a lot of hydrothermal features. So groundwater, heat and water and different types of pressure because of the active volcano. Some of the big features are geysers, which are when water is heated underground, going through a type of restriction and spewing up into the air. Hot springs, which is just kind of a pool of hot water, which could be anywhere from mildly warm to boiling. Mud pots have a lot more sediment and are actually made of mud, and those heat can usually have bubbling. Or femoral, which is about steam escaping. So sometimes these different features can transition between. If you have a hot spring that gets too hot, all of the water can evaporate and become ephemeral. And it is an extremely popular park in the United States, with 4 million visitors recorded from, I believe it's 2014 all the way up until now, every single year. And 4 million visitors is quite a lot in one year. And especially with the pandemic and people wanting to get out in nature more, those numbers have actually been rising. So some more information, there's actually little villages all throughout Yellowstone. I actually live just over here south by the south entrance. We do use the south entrance for our tours. It has a lot of interesting and really important ecological significance, with animals of different kinds that could be rare or not found anywhere else. Largest concentration of mammals in the continental 48 states. So not counting Alaska or Hawaii, we are quite diverse. A lot of species of birds, and nesting birds are ones that are able to reproduce here. So not only is it home, but it can also help continue those species. There's a lot of cultural significance with archaeological sites of Native Americans and the area of why this could be a problem with a lot of other people. So an archaeological site of a Native American tribe or a significant area could also have issues for others not wanting to it be appropriated and put in a glass display case. But there's also the history of that being taken from those people by the settlers. It is an extremely active park. Even though this is a huge area, there are thousands miles of hiking trails. There's nature viewing is an extremely wide activity. And we have mountains, we have a lake, you can see here. This little ring of villages, these red dots are the different villages. And it's put that way because it was originally wagon coaches that were bringing guests to see these different spots. So they would spend a night at these different spots. There's little villages with hotels, attractions, foods. So when you would come in, you would pay however much for your ride. I don't recall the specifics, but I did know that at one point. And you would spend a day going to each place. And now it's maybe an hour or two by car to go to each different area. So this is a picture of Old Faithful. This is I think it was the Lower Geyser Basin. So there's a lot of activity with these thermal features. This right up here is Old Faithful, and I actually worked in the cafeteria right behind here. So that summer, my main full-time job was in this cafeteria right over here, so I watched Old Faithful going off all the time. and I worked for volunteering for the National Park Service. And my main responsibility was doing roves, something that we called roves, where I would be walking around on these little boardwalks and answering any questions for everybody. I'd be going to the different areas as we predicted when different geysers would go off to give information, and just making sure that everybody's still okay, no one got injured, and no one tries to pet the wildlife, because that could be bad. So the main part of this presentation is about the wolf. So here we have a picture of a wolf in winter, and they surprisingly can blend in. We have different colors as well as different sizes, but mainly they are very large. So gray wolf is the specific species here. I did want to note that I am just very used to using the British spelling of gray, G-R-E-Y. Well, technically the American version is G-R-A-Y. I'm sorry. So they are very highly social pack animals. They're very large, and I'll be showing a comparison of different animals shortly. They are carnivorous, and one of the big points for this presentation is they are the top predator. So they are pretty much able to go out and eat anything around, and they are extremely important to the ecosystem. So wolves are extremely social, and they do live in packs. And a fun fact would be that wolves don't actually howl at the moon. They howl to communicate with each other. It is a form of speaking, and they're able to communicate over long distances that way. So specifically in Yellowstone, we do have about 9 packs, which are their groups, and usually about 10 individuals per pack. It has fluctuated between 83 to 108 wolves since about 2009. It's roughly enough wolves, and if you're thinking about how large that area is, this is a good amount of wolves, a good number of wolves. Even though that's such a large area, those packs have very strict territories. And even though they're social, they're only social within their packs. They can get very aggressive towards foreign wolves, though it is possible for them to accept new wolves and have that change in social structure. They are very accustomed to hunting prey. They consume a very wide range of different animals. They are able to take down prey that others are not able to. So it's very important as that top predator to have the necessary step in that food web, where if they don't have a predator, what would happen? And we'll talk about that in just a bit. So for size, you can see the gray wolf right in the back here. And the coyote is about the size of a normal dog, maybe a little bit smaller. And then the red fox is relatively small. They really often hunt elk, and that is a large portion of their winter prey. In the summer, they'll have a little bit more deer in it, and they sometimes can kill bison, though it's still not a large part. And probably more of the younger bison are what they would be able to take down, depending on their teamwork and the circumstances. They'll usually go for the weak, young, or small prey so that they're able to escape uninjured. You can see again, compared to a human, wolves are very large. And of course, this would be an adult man, which would probably be 6 feet, so 2 meters, I believe that is. And then we have a very large dog, the Great Dane, the coyote, which would be most large dogs, and then the dire wolf, which would be a kind of medium to large dog. So wolves are very large, very powerful creatures. So they used to have a very large range that they would be able to hunt, that they lived. And there were a lot more wolves at one point in time. So they were able to live all the way from up in the Arctic, all the way down to Mexico. If you're able to see this gray line, this historic range, all over the continental United States. And again, right here is where Yellowstone currently is. So if you see this green is the current range, kind of going up into Canada and still going up into this north area, but only barely going into the continental United States. This loss of the range could be due to a combination of loss of habitat, as humans were coming in and destroying things and building settlements, as well as there's a big problem with an extermination programs of the time where people didn't want predators. They saw them as a really bad thing, and they wanted elk. So if we killed the wolf, that means we get more elk, which they saw as a good thing. They wanted more elk. And when we saw that the wolves were killed off, the elk did flourish. You had more elk for hunting permits, for abilities to make money off of that, as well as the tourism of coming just to see these huge animals. We did come back in 1973 and put the wolf on the endangered species list, saying that the greater Yellowstone ecosystem was one of these recovery areas, so it is not allowed to hunt them, it is not allowed to injure them, and there are quite a few big repercussions for harming a wolf now. Between different times, there were a couple different reintroduction pathways, as well as different types of, so there were a couple different times that they tried to reintroduce wolves, starting in 1995. They had wolves that were brought in, they could get injured, they could run home. So they could run quite a far distance to leave the area that was designated for where they should recover, either going back to their home range or for similar areas around. There are a lot of mountains around Yellowstone, and there's different geography. Relatively recently, we have the 25th anniversary of wolves being returned to Yellowstone, though of course those first couple ones were not necessarily successful. So a big part of my purpose for bringing this up is to talk about the greater picture, the ecology, which introduces both biological factors and non-biological factors. So examples of biotic factors would be those animals, plants, organisms, something that is alive, while the abiotic factors are sunlight, air, water, something that we would not consider alive or to have life. And all of these things interact together in some balance as these relationships ebb and flow. Right here, talking a little bit more about this balance and how everything fits together. We have the food web, where a lot of people will know about how some things are herbivores, only eating plant matter, and you're able to get those herbivores right here. And then you'll have the next level of either carnivores or omnivores, carnivores being meat eaters only, and omnivores able to eat both meat and plants. While these top predators right up here are able to eat just about all of these animals, these areas that have meat. So there's a lot of different interactions between what can be eaten and what eats what. So you can see right here, this rat is able to be eaten by a lot of different things. Well, this whiptail eats a lot of different things. So if one thing is affected, it might change quite a few of these different food chains. If you have a food chain, would be a plant to rat to ringtail lemur to a wolf. While this food web has a lot of different food chains in it. Now, a little bit more complex would be the energy levels, the trophic levels within an ecosystem. So you'll start with these producers, those plants, and they get energy from the sunlight. And then the first group of animals that are eating those producers are the primary consumers. So the producers used sunlight to create energy, and they stored that energy and they used it to grow. So you lost a little bit of energy along the way. Then it is eaten by the primary consumers and they use energy, and it's not all completely converted, as well as they use it to grow. So you lose a little bit more energy. And then the secondary consumers, those that eat the primary consumers, also lose a little bit more energy along the way, all the way up to the top consumers, where not all ecosystems are able to sustain all these different levels of consumers. So the top predator could be a different level depending on the ecosystem, based on how much primary producers, how many primary producers, how much biomass there is in that ecosystem. A desert might not have as much energy at that base of the pyramid as, say, a tropical rainforest. The next thing that I'd like to bring up would be a predator-prey relationship. So there actually are fluctuations in the population sizes of different animals. So if you have a prey item that has a big population boom, then you'll have the predator of that also be able to eat lots and lots and have more babies and be more successful. But once those predators outgrow too much, they're eating way more food, then the prey will start to decline, and then the predator shortly after. These kind of oscillation cycles are known as boom and bust. So they're increasing and then decreasing. So you can see right here, this is talking about the predator-prey interaction, the relationship of rabbits and wolves. As more are increasing, then the predator will be able to flourish until it is no longer able to. And in the real world, there are also other things that could interact with this relationship. If either the predator or the prey get interacted with by a natural disaster or disease, that can change a lot of things. So specifically with the wolf, you saw the loss of the wolf allowed elk, one of their big prey items, to increase quite a bit. But that doesn't stop there. The food web continues, and we have what's called a cascade effect down that food web of the elk. Well, I'll be able to talk about this more in just a moment, written out, and we can come back to this page. So these different interactions are able to ripple out through the ecosystem as it interacts with other areas. So with the elk, you can see the quite large area. It's a very prized for hunting, as well as very important to the ecosystem. So other animals do prey on the elk, but as we remember before, really the wolves were the top predator. So without the wolves, there was a lot of predatory pressure off of the elk. So without the wolves there, the elk did really well, to the point of pushing the limits of Yellowstone's carrying capacity. The carrying capacity of an environment is the max population size that an environment can sustainably support for a particular species. If we don't have enough food, then you can't have more babies. So it was seen that elk would just sit and relax, grazing, and they didn't feel the need to continue to move. So all of the prey species for the elk, which would be young willows, aspens, cottonwoods, were being eaten up and were not able to continue. So if we go back to here, you see the elk continues to go up. Then the aspen would go down because there would be less as it continues to thrive. And then other things such as birds or beavers that rely on these tree species would be negatively infected as well. So after the reintroduction of wolves, elk became more vigilant. They weren't able to just sit and lazy around and eat all day. They had to stay on the move. They were in smaller groups, staying further in the woods so they weren't able to be spotted, possibly, trying to avoid encounters with wolves. In the absence of harsh winters, which is also a factor that can change, wolves became, again, the primary reason for elks dying. When elk population was about a third of what it is today, the willow stands along the streams were in bad shape. But now, with more elk than ever, 3 times as many, willow stands are doing great because the elk are not staying there and eating everything. Because the predatory pressure from wolves keeps elk on the move, they don't have time to intensely browse and eat those willows. So another big animal that can continue this cascade effect were the beaver. So from one colony of beaver in 1995, there are now 9 colonies. And beavers do need willows, a type of tree, to survive in winter, which elk can eat if they are sitting in one area. As the beavers spread and build new dams and ponds, it's able to create more habitat for different areas. It affects stream hydrology, which would be how the water moves along an ecosystem, an environment. And it's able to store water in the water table, provide shade and shelter for fish, as well as help with birds for those trees. But there aren't the only factors that can affect different things. So the beavers could have also been affected by wildfires that happened in 1988, as well as other issues that we might not know about. And due to research, we've actually done studies seeing how willows and different stands of trees are affected by these different simulations. So intense elk browsing on willows and stimulated beaver cuttings produce stunted or shorter willow stands that weren't able to bounce back as quickly, while only beaver cuttings without the elk browsing were able to produce healthy willow stands that were able to grow back quicker. And this shows such a rare chance of this revival of an ecosystem as the top predator is removed and then reintroduced into the ecosystem. And remember, this has been 25 years-ish. It's a little bit wonky about that number, but roughly since they were able to be reintroduced into the area, and seeing how that affects through time, different generations becoming intensely scared of wolves again, the elk being taught to not stay in one area, teaching their young to continue, and we're seeing that cascade effect throughout the ecosystem. So we started off talking about Yellowstone National Park and getting a little bit of a feel about the historical, ecological, and scientific significance. We talked a little bit about gray wolves and their social structure, the size and diet, especially in Yellowstone. We talked about the old and new range, as well as their local removal and reintroduction. And then we talked more about the science of these definitions for trophic levels, food webs, predatory-prey relationships, and the cascade effect. And then we went more into the impacts before and after the reintroduction of wolves, specifically their effect on elk and beavers. We also shortly touched on the research that is being done to understand why this is really impacting the Yellowstone's ecosystem in total. And do we have anybody with questions?
No, but I would like to congratulate you because that was the best presentation I ever seen on dictionary.
Ta-da!
Wow. Really awesome.
Yes, definitely. Have any questions, please do say. I am amazed I got the half an hour. I was a little bit over, but I tried. It's been a while since I've given a presentation.
Yes. Good night. I would like to congratulate you for this research and for your time. And I would like to know how long or how long have you spent in that research? So what was your first?
Yeah, we can talk about my background.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, so I have a bachelor's degree, which is a 4-year college degree in environmental science, specifically in natural resources, conservation, and biodiversity. I really enjoy ecology and seeing how all these different factors work together. So I was able to work at Yellowstone, which I was speaking about earlier. That was summer of 2019, which is where I learned a lot of this information, because this is something a lot of people ask about. It's a big problem in the area, not only because this effect on the ecosystem, but would you want a wolf next door? All these local farmers were seeing these wolves being brought in, and they're like, please, no. So this is a big community issue as well, which is very interesting to me. We had a lot of different information that I learned at that time as people asked, and I kind of became the go-to person. There was also, now that I am back into the area, last summer I was a park guide for a national park in South Dakota, a different state. And now I'm back in Wyoming in the area and learning again and seeing the beautiful area. Okay, excellent question. I hope I was able to answer it. Do we have anybody else? If somebody wants to just read the next question, or if we have somebody that's in a specific order of raising their hand.
Sure. There is Mikaías and then Lisa. Mikaías, go
Hello.
on, please.
Hello. Good, good night. Is it's good your presentation, but I'm now speaking English. But I am from Peru. I work in Ambiente Ministry. Good.
That's very cool. Hopefully, we might be working on doing a version of this in Spanish that will help me with my Spanish and be able to show everybody the information again. So we might be able to try again sometime.
Little speaking English, but uh, great, great,
Thank you for
great.
listening.
Okay.
I heard Johan wants to help you with that presentation in Spanish, right, Johan?
Ah, perfect.
Johan.
Wow. Harold. I don't know. That's a
That-
I saw
That
you.
didn't sound like a good.
A little, a
That's
little.
what I read on your
Entender.
mind.
Oh,
Mikaías,
Harold is the best at translating. Oh, okay.
No, I mean, your presentation was serious. I cannot be serious, so I won't be
Invitation
that
one group,
helpful for you.
Maybe something we'll have to figure
Wow.
out at some point.
interest.
Do we have another question?
Yeah, I have a question. I was just wondering if you, in your time working at Yellowstone, had any close encounters with wolves, or you'd seen any wolves, or do
I
they
did
hide from
not
people?
actually. I did see bear. We have a lot of grizzly bears and black bears in the area. I did see a grizzly bear. It was too close for my comfort, though we were a safe distance away, but I have not seen a wolf in person yet.
That's
Yeah, thank you for
probably
your question.
best.
We'll see what happens. Yeah, and then the next question.
Okay, Micaías, just for you to know, in a few minutes we will go with the presentation in Spanish. Vamos a hacer la presentación en español en unos minutos. ¿Listo, Micaías? Es que fresco, relájate. Relájate y luego, y ahorita nos das tu opinión. ¿Listo? Mi pregunta, my question. You know, my question was about how, I don't know, what is that feeling about living in an active volcano? You live in an active volcano. Like, it's scary, isn't it?
It can be, depending on how you think about it. So it's a very powerful, active volcano that I live on top of or next to. I like to think that if anything happened, I would not live to see it. I would not feel the pain. It would be very quick.
That's what you don't know.
Oh yeah, there's been predictions that if it went off, then the world could have a winter, really bad because of the ash and stuff. So you guys could starve. I would die very quickly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have fun. Do we have any other?
Who had a question? So I think Johan and then Ruben. So Micaías, wait a minute. Don't worry. Johan, go on, please.
Well, guys, I don't know what happened with my microphone. Let me 1 minute. Okay. Well, my question is, Abby, what's the human impact nowadays in Yellowstone? So, how does natural protection laws work there?
The laws? Yeah. So because it is a national park, federal laws apply. So directly from the government. There are also additional laws based on which state it is in. but it's a really big thing by park rangers. So I was not a protection park ranger. I did not work on the legal side, but I do know some about it. They are just like police officers. They have to go to academy and get certification and are going through that sort of procedure to be sure that everything is good. There are specific additional requirements, such as medical licensing to be able to work in such a remote area. But they are able to pull over people for speeding. They're able to arrest poachers, people that hunt wildlife without permits. You could even be arrested for going through and making sure that you're recording things without permission. So there are a lot of rules and regulations, just like any other area. And this is specifically federal area, so it's a little bit higher up there. Thank you for asking.
Yes, do you have a specific question? Miguel, do you have a question? Your microphone is off.
No, no, I little speaking English, and then only listen.
Okay. It's just that you raised your
Yes.
hand, so I thought that you.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
that's it.
wait in
So,
traduction, but next.
it's okay. It's okay. Later, don't worry. Don't worry. Just listen then. Ruben Eloy. Hi, how are you?
Hey, hello, good evening, everybody. So I have
Hello.
a question for Luna. So Luna, so do you have any protocol on in order to react when maybe the volcano is gonna have a eruption? So
So
how
there
you guys handle that situation? So you go to a specific place. There are civil organization who move then and take care of the people, or how is the protocol? And how
something
many
like
times
that.
do you? Sorry.
There are definitely, yeah. Thank you for asking the question. There are general protocols for if something bad happens, this. So when I worked in my national park in South Dakota, there were protocols if there was a bomb threat. There was protocols for if someone brought a gun into the building. There are protocols for if there are violence. There are protocols for natural disasters such as fires, tornadoes. So there are definitely information that should be in place. And this is region specific. So for here in Yellowstone, the volcano and geological activity is a big part of those protocols. So if we have scientists come back saying that there is geological activity with earthquakes, with the water table changing, then that is a indication that something is wrong, and depending on what is decided, likely an evacuation would happen. So you would have specific areas where people would be evacuated to, as well as you'd have different protocols based on what happens. From what I know, the water table, that if the ground was heating to indicate an eruption, the water table is still very low. So if we were to see that activity more and more, then the water would be heated and you would see those signs as it goes more and more. Right now, we do not see that, thankfully, and actually, we're seeing that as quite a bit of a ways off into the future. But if that happened on the scale that I'm referring to, that would be a national and possibly even a global issue. So a lot more people would look into that and have to react as well. Hopefully that answered your questions.
Okay, Luna, thank you. And the last question is, So how many times do you conduct rehearsal in a year for evacuation?
What do you mean rehearsal?
I mean, I think if you follow the protocols, so you have to do rehearsal in order that the population know how to react in a crisis situation. So I don't know if you conduct rehearsal in order to do the evacuation plan.
Probably not to this level. So you can do a rehearsal, a drill, as Gio is pointing out, is also another word for it. But we would do drills for if there's a fire in a building, knowing where your evacuation is, not to this scale. Just because this scale, if we did, it would be not as helpful. It is not as common of an emergency, and it wouldn't be as easy to execute as please leave the building, it is on fire. So we have not done a full evacuation of Yellowstone to my knowledge. And to my knowledge, we do not plan to as a drill as if such a thing was happening. But it is possible if factors change and it's seeing that we see these activities that something could happen more towards the imminent future. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
asking. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. And the next question?
Janet, didn't you have a question?
Yes,
Ah,
I
vale,
think
vale.
that you have
I'm so sorry.
a
I'm so
very
sorry, Janet.
interesting life, and you have a very interesting life. And my question is, do you have other related research about your field? And what other interests do you have?
I really enjoy greater ecology and these interactions in specific ecosystems. I do know a bit about how geysers work as well. So we'll see if Gio can convince me to do a presentation on that. We'll see. I was able to do this presentation because I recently started a new job and had a little bit of time off. But once the season gets in, I highly doubt I will be awake long enough after work to do a full presentation, at least not to this level. I really enjoy this topic, so I was happy that I was able to put as much energy in. But we'll see. We'll see. I have worked with tortoises in the past. Part of my job while I was in college was caring for endangered tortoises, which is a type of turtle. They were taken from poachers and meat markets, so they could have had injuries due to how they were hunted. They could have different diseases, as a lot of the animals are in close quarters. And a lot of them were highly stressed due to being in captivity, but they were not able to be released due to their condition. So I have also worked a lot with endangered animals of that kind and looking into the effect of amphibians and reptiles specifically was really interesting. And then last summer, I worked in a cave. I was working in Wind Cave National Park in South Dakota. So I also know a lot about that area. I was giving tours in the cave. So I have a lot of information memorized from that too.
Thank you.
All right. And anyone else?
Yes, I had a question about about wolves. So, I mean, humans are predators somehow for the elk. So the thing is,
Could you repeat the beginning of your sentence?
okay, humans are predators for elks.
Yes.
So that is, hunting season didn't cover for the amount of elks that were.
No.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
So, and there's also that not all humans hurt them. So, if you are driving along on a road and you see an elk and you just sit there and maybe take your camera out and take a look, why would they be scared? They see this millions of times all throughout the year. Why would they be scared? What would they look for to react, to be afraid? But if they hear a wolf, they know to be scared. If they see a wolf, they know to be scared. They don't see humans as predators, even though from a long ways off, with high-powered rifles and guns, we are able to prey on them, to hunt them. That does not necessarily mean that in the ecological sense, we are their predator. They don't see us as a predator. It might be better put that way.
They don't
Yeah.
run away and they keep eating the plants.
Very good question. Yeah, it's a very important question too. That yes, we technically just put more people out there and hunt more, but they would hear the gunfire and their buddy drop dead next to them. What are they supposed to react to? How can they do anything to be afraid, to keep moving? Instead, they're like, okay, this spot was cursed. I'm going to go and eat here. Yeah, thank you for asking. Hello. Yes.
May I have some questions?
Please.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm sorry for being late because it's early morning in Vietnam right now.
Mhm.
Yes, so the first question I want to ask you, I want to know about you. Where are you from and your major? I was listening that relate to like environment and also like ecology or something like that. And the
Yeah.
second question, I'm wondering that your projects is very big and very meaningful, useful for the community. Um, in what way you can collaborate with other groups and other organizations to raise the funds or something sponsor for the project, or you have any further development or ideas for the projects in the future? Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking. I'm sure a lot of people could be wondering about these questions. I did not talk about where I'm originally from. I am actually originally from Tennessee, in kind of the mid-eastern United States, considered the South. Then I have worked seasonal jobs in different states, mainly dealing with the environment. My degree is a bachelor's degree, which is a 4-year college degree in environmental science, mainly dealing specifically with the environment and the animals and creatures that live in the environment. I specifically have a big interest in ecology, so I've really enjoyed how everything works together. With what you can do in the future, you can look at our National Park Service websites for these different areas, could have more information about what happened for these different things. I did have the links instead of going through and actually making them citations because I did not feel like it. If this was a formal thing, I might have. But a lot of the information for the pictures specifically that I got were from the National Park Service websites for Yellowstone, both information about wolves as well as elk mainly. There's different projects that you can look into for supporting our National Park Service is a huge help. A lot of specific parks can also be donated to either by calling them or by their website. That was a big thing that really helped us in Wind Cave National Park. We're a very small national park that I was with last summer and able to help with the cave ecology and talking about that to everyone. And a big part were the local tribes and indigenous people of the area. The big cultural aspect was a big part of my job. Just as up here at Yellowstone, there are a lot of different aspects that have to be taken into account before a big project like this has to be even thought of as possible. So there are a lot of different organizations, not necessarily directly, but some do work with the government to work on these projects. Thank you for asking.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much for answering. Can I have the final one?
Yes.
So, may I know, are there any risks or adventurous journey or something like that when doing the research?
Of injury?
Yeah, adventurous journey, and I mean adventurous investigation, and any risk when doing the research?
Well, most research does have risk, particularly when working with animals. And a big issue with Yellowstone is how wild the habitat is, for lack of a better word. It'll take hours to get to the closest human settlement for any medical attention that needs to happen. So for like the area that the company I'm working with this winter, to be a guide, it is required to have a specific wilderness safety course, which includes surviving in the outdoors in cold environments, first aid, up to an EMT level, which is a medical provider that works in an ambulance, and able to address any situation that comes up. So there are a lot more. Not only could you get lost, you could get frozen to death, and you might be eaten by your test subject. Please don't do any of those.
Wow, I'm curious. Thank you so much. Yes.
Do we have any other questions?
Question.
Yeah.
Sorry, Carlos.
I have a question. Hi.
Hi.
Would you like to work in another country doing a new research or just in United States?
I actually would be interested in working in other countries. I just really love nature and how everything can work together. I do not currently have a passport, and I have a lot of student loans. So that would be an issue if I wanted to go somewhere else. It's been recommended to me to look into working in Canada, but that might be a bit ways off. I am learning Spanish. We're trying. So it could be a country that speaks Spanish would be an option. I actually had a few professors that had, I believe, a project in Peru for, oh man, what are they called? I can't remember what they're called. It's a small rodent that they have a research project in Peru.
Wow. In which city? Sorry. I'm living right now in Lima. Yeah. Cusco, maybe?
I do not know. I was not
You
part of
don't-
this project. I could look it up. Are you in the WhatsApp group?
No, I'm not in the WhatsApp group, but
No.
I have WhatsApp. Yeah, I can send my phone number.
Nick Online actually has a few WhatsApp groups for being able to share. There's English, there's Spanish, and then there's English, Spanish,